Oh, I'm so sorry I wasn't here to greet you. Oh, yeah, yes, I am Miss Carpenter. And were you at the parade? Wasn't it wonderful? Oh, I think that we are finally going to achieve our end. We will have votes for women before the decade is out, don't you think? Yes, I'm Miss Carpenter, and I'm so glad that you're here to help with our cause. We need all the help we can get. We have been working for suffrage for over 100 years, and this is the year that I think that we will be able to be finally successful. I was talking to my great niece the other day and asked her what she thought suffrage was, and she said, "Well, Aunt Martha, it sounds like something very painful, like something you would suffer." It does sound like that, doesn't it? But I told her it's actually something wonderful. It's having a voice in your community, in your city, in your state, in your country. And in this modern year of 1918, do you know who does not have a voice? Women, that's who. It is time we were listened to, and we will bring our concerns to President Wilson, and I think finally we will achieve his support. And with that support, we will win the vote. I know, it is a disgraceful thing the way women are treated. In Indiana and in the United States, women are second-class citizens. No, under the law, we are no better than children in many ways. We cannot make contracts. We cannot serve in juries. Any money that a woman earns goes towards her husband. He has control of it. He has control of her property. If a woman does have a job, the same job as a man, she doesn't get paid as well. Women are discouraged from and sometimes even prohibited from continuing their education. Oh, I loved school. Do you love school? I have always been interested in learning. I used to borrow books from my uncle's library and read them, devour them. It opened my mind to so many new things and new worlds and experiences. I wanted to go to college. But my father felt it would be a waste of money since my role in life was to be a wife and a mother. Now he sent my brother to college, and he was destined to be a husband and father. It's so not fair. As a matter of fact, I did not marry. I have more rights as a single woman than I would have as a married woman. A woman is so dependent on the kindness of men in her life. Many women are often sent to mental institutions on the word of a husband or a father or a brother, even a son. Mrs. Lincoln, the wife of President Lincoln, was sent to a mental institution by her son. Can you imagine? And she was not able to defend herself, even though Illinois had a law that protected people from involuntary confinement. It was really in name only. She was not able to defend herself, and she was finally freed through the auspices of Mrs. Myra Bradwell, who had studied law but was not allowed to practice it. A lady lawyer. Isn't that amazing? And do you see, if we have the vote, we will be able to stop these terrible laws, stop these abuses, and we will be able to give the benefit of our opinion to the public discourse. Now, who would not want that? There are some women who do not believe that women should have the right to vote, that we are encroaching upon the sphere of men, and that the only place where a woman should be allowed to reign is in the home. We have a little song about that, and you may sing along with it. I'm sure you'll catch on to it very quickly. My niece will play for us. Oh dear, what can the matter be? Oh dear, what can the matter be? Oh dear, what can the matter be? Women are wanting to vote. Women have husbands, they are protected. Women have sons by whom they're directed. Women have fathers, they are protected. Why are they wanting to vote? Oh dear, what can the matter be? Oh dear, what can the matter be? Oh dear, what can the matter be? Women are wanting to vote. Women have homes there they should labor. Women have children whom they should favor. Women have time to learn of each neighbor. Why are they wanting to vote? Oh dear, what can the matter be? Oh dear, what can the matter be? Oh dear, what can the matter be? Why are they wanting to vote? Women can dress, they love society. Women have cash with all its variety. Women can pray with sweetest piety. Why are they wanting to vote? Oh dear, what can the matter be? Oh dear, what can the matter be? Oh dear, what can the matter be? Why are they wanting to vote? Women have reared all the sons of the brave. Women have shared in the burdens they gave. Women have labored this country to save, and that's why we're going to vote. Oh dear, what can the matter be? Oh dear, what can the matter be? Oh dear, what can the matter be? Why should men get every vote? Very nice job. What have some women said about this? Oh, I have some notes here. This will help you when you are trying to convince people of the rightness of our cause. Elizabeth Cady Stanton said this: Man has endeavored in every way that he could to destroy woman's confidence in her own powers, to lessen her self-respect, and to make her willing to lead a dependent and abject life. In view of these injuries, we insist that women have immediate admission to all the rights and privileges which belong to them as citizens of the United States. Let's see, here's another. Oh, our own Dr. Mary Thomas from Richmond, Indiana. What a marvelous woman she is. If taxes are laid upon us in any shape, without our having a legal representation where they are laid, we are reduced from free subjects to slaves. She said that before the Indiana legislature in 1859. Can you imagine? We have been working on this for so long. Oh, and of course, on her visit to Indiana, Susan B. Anthony said, "Make the brain under the bonnet count for as much as the brain under the hat." In fact, there are some states which allow women the vote. Wyoming was the first, even before it was a state, back when it was just a territory. Gave women the vote in 1869. Then Utah, Colorado, Idaho followed suit. Many of the western states. In fact, in this year of 1918, there are about 15 states, I believe, that allow women to vote in all elections. And then another dozen or so that allow women to vote for presidential elections. Now, we had such hope in Indiana. Last year, in 1917, the legislature passed several measures. Women were given the right to vote for presidential electors, and in some state and city elections as well. They were also given the right to vote for delegates to the Constitutional Convention of Indiana, and we felt that we would be able to amend the Constitution to ensure women's right to vote. Oh, such an exciting time. Thousands, tens of thousands of women registered to vote. In Columbus, 2 African Americans were the first women to register to vote there. In Porter County, when all was done, 80% of the registered voters were women. Do you think the men of Indiana were scared? Shortly after that, before the election, the Indiana Supreme Court declared these measures unconstitutional, and women's right to vote in Indiana was snatched away from us. So you see, we cannot rely on the states to provide the vote for women. It could easily be taken away even once it was given. We need an amendment to the United States Constitution that ensures that voting rights will not be taken away from us women. And that is what we are lobbying President Wilson for. So you see, we cannot simply leave this matter to the states where our rights could be snatched away from us. We need an amendment to the United States Constitution to guarantee the right of women to vote. We aim this year to recruit 100,000 new suffragists, perhaps you will be among them, and 700,000 signatures on a petition to Congress to enact an amendment to the Constitution guaranteeing women's rights. I think we may be able to bring President Wilson around to our way of thinking. He thinks it ought to be left to the states, but I think he was unnerved when we picketed the White House this year. Unfortunately, many women were arrested, even though they were behaving perfectly well. They were thrown into jail, they were beaten. Some women went on hunger strikes and were force-fed. It was terrible, terrible treatment, and this got in the press. President Wilson did not care for it, and I do not understand how he can oppose a constitutional amendment when his own daughter, Jessie Wilson Sayre, is a suffragist. If President Wilson were here, this is what I would say to him. President Wilson, we are in the midst of a war in Europe. We women have helped with fighting this war. We have taken over jobs previously done by men. We have worked in munitions factories. We've risked our lives. We have worked as railway guards, police. Many of us have joined the Red Cross, even the military. We are working for freedom across the world, and we do not even have full rights in our own country. Something that Mr. Wilson should remember, that it was women who gained him re-election. His re-election was in doubt in 1916, but California, which allows the votes of women, was the state that put him over the top. I believe he should remember that. Jessie, let's play this next song. We thank you, California, for everything that you have done. Though he's not your native son, you have treated him like one. The nation takes its hat off to the great and golden West. California, you have stood a mighty test. Be good to California, Mr. Wilson. California was good to you. And don't forget that votes for women help to pull the victory through. For when the tide was turning fast against you, she made your dreams come true. Be good to California, Mr. Wilson. California was mighty good to you. Be good to California, Mr. Wilson. California was good to you. And don't forget that votes for women help to pull the victory through. For when the tide was turning fast against you, she made your dreams come true. Be good to California, Mr. Wilson. California was mighty good to you. There is a hard truth that we in the movement will have to face. This movement has been divided. It has been divided according to tactics, some wishing to take a more aggressive stance and some taking a less aggressive stance. But it also divided according to race. Some white women have used the argument with men in power that if you give women the vote, you give white women the vote, it will dilute the vote of black men. They have discouraged African American women from joining in our struggle, even though many of them have fought long and hard for this, as much or more than many of the white women. They have felt that issues of race are things that a matter that women looking for suffrage should not bother with, because it is not their fight. Frances Harper spoke to the National Women's Rights Convention back in the 1860s, a black woman, and this is what she said, among other remarks. "I do not believe that giving the woman the ballot is immediately going to cure all the ills of life. I do not believe that white women are dewdrops just exhaled from the skies. I think that, like men, they may be divided into three classes: the good, the bad, and the indifferent. The good would vote according to their convictions and principles, the bad, as dictated by prejudice or malice, and the indifferent will vote on the strongest side of the question with the winning party. You white women here speak of rights. I speak of wrongs. I, as a colored woman, have had in this country an education which has made me feel as if I were in the situation of Ishmael, my hand against every man, and every man's hand against me." As Frances Harper said, we are all in this together. This granting of women's rights or guarantee of women's rights is only the beginning. We shall have to continue to fight. We shall have to look at those others who do not have the vote, Native Americans, the Chinese, even children of Chinese who have been born in this country are not allowed to vote. And the vote is only the start in fostering an equal society, a society where everyone can enjoy the pursuit of happiness, where everyone is able to make their living as they wish and have their homes and their families and be protected by the law. We hope for that day to come. And I think that we will, but we will have to keep vigilant, as many of the women of the past have been vigilant also. I would like to introduce some of them to you. Amanda Way is known as the mother of women's rights in Indiana. She was one of the founding members of the first Women's Rights Convention held in Dublin, Indiana in 1851 that called for equal access to education and equal pay for women. This convention resulted in the formation of the Indiana Women's Rights Association and helped found the American Women's Suffrage Association in 1869. The Lily was first published by Amelia Bloomer, a women's rights supporter who also advocated practical dress for women. Loose trousers known as bloomers were named after her. Mary Birdsall had been women's editor of the Indiana Farmer. In the mid-1850s, she purchased the Lily and published it in Richmond, Indiana for 5 years. Mary Ann Shadd Cary said in a letter to Frederick Douglass, "We should do more and talk less." She was the first black woman in North America to edit and publish a newspaper, the Provincial Freeman. She was one of the first black female lawyers in the United States. In 1874, she was among a group of women addressing the House Judiciary Committee lobbying for the vote for women. She said, as a colored woman and a resident of this district, a taxpayer, she did not have the same rights as men in her situation. Frances Watkins Harper was a poet, teacher, abolitionist, lecturer, and women's rights advocate. She spoke at the 1866 National Women's Rights Convention in New York, urging white suffragists to support their African American colleagues and fight both sexism and racism. She was co-founder and vice president of the National Association of Colored Women's Clubs. Vice president of the Indiana State Women's Suffrage Society, Lizzie Bunnell learned the printing business in Peru, Indiana. In 1861, she started the Mayflower, a woman's periodical devoted to articles on women's rights, temperance, and literature. Dr. Mary Thomas was a frequent contributor to the Mayflower. Bunnell later married Dr. Reed and moved to Iowa, where she continued to work for women's suffrage. Dr. Mary Thomas studied medicine with her husband in Wabash County, Indiana, and then further studied in Philadelphia and Cleveland. She and her husband moved to Richmond, Indiana, where they practiced medicine. She was president of the Indiana Women's Rights Society in 1856. She contributed to the Lily and the Mayflower, two women's suffrage newspapers. In 1859, she was one of 3 women to address the Indiana state legislature and present a petition calling for a married woman's property law and a woman's suffrage amendment to the state constitution. At her death in 1888, as she had specified, her pallbearers were all women and included 2 African-American women. Universal suffrage is the only guarantee against despotism, said May Wright Sewell, teacher, writer, suffragist, and internationally known peace activist. She founded the Indiana Girls Classical School and helped start the Indianapolis Equal Suffrage Society in 1878. She was active in leadership of the National Women's Suffrage Association and National Council of Women of the United States. In 1888, she and Susan B. Anthony published an open letter to presidential candidate Benjamin Harrison, urging him to include women in the platform of equality he was proposing. She was one of the founders of the Propylaeum Women's Club in 1890. She died in 1920 without ever having the opportunity to vote. Helen Gougher of Lafayette, Indiana, was a lawyer and journalist and gifted speaker. An ardent proponent of prohibition, she also took up the cause of women's suffrage. In 1894, she encouraged women to attempt to vote in the general election. Gougher was not allowed to vote and sued the Tippecanoe County election officials. She represented herself before the Indiana Supreme Court. Although she lost, her arguments for granting women the vote were widely discussed. Dr. Amelia Keller retained her own last name when she married. She was the first female faculty member of the Indiana University School of Medicine, teaching from 1908 to 1919. She was the first president of the Women's Franchise League of Indiana and vice president of the Indiana Federation of Women's Clubs. She wrote a suffrage column for a local magazine. Susan B. Anthony made several trips to Indiana and was connected with many Indiana suffragists, in particular May Sewell. A teacher and writer, she formed the National Women's Suffrage Association with Elizabeth Cady Stanton. She visited Bloomington, Terre Haute, Lafayette, and Indianapolis, and addressed a joint session of the state legislature in 1897, urging support of a woman's suffrage amendment to the United States Constitution. The Indianapolis Propylaeum was formed in 1888 as the brainchild of May Sewell to provide a center of cultivation for the public and particularly the women of Indianapolis. The name Propylaeum, a Greek word meaning gateway, was chosen for its name. It was to be a meeting site for the various women's clubs, and only women were included in its corporation. The Propylaeum was located on the present site of the World War Memorial and moved to its current location on Delaware Street in 1923. African-American entrepreneur Madam C.J. Walker was active in supporting many social issues, including women's suffrage. She hosted meetings of black suffragists in her home and likely helped finance the cause. In 1912, she hosted the first meeting of Branch No. 7 of the Indianapolis Equal Suffrage Association in her home, where Carrie Barnes, a young African-American teacher, was elected president. Barnes said, "We all feel that colored women have need for the ballot that white women have, and a great many needs that they have not." Idb Wells Barnett was an African-American educator, journalist, and activist. She worked for women's rights while criticizing the movement for ignoring racial inequalities. She campaigned against the lynching of black men, for which she was ostracized by white suffragists. She was one of the founders of the National Association of Colored Women's Clubs, which addressed women's rights and civil rights in general. The Women's Franchise League of Indiana was born of an effort to elect a woman to the Indianapolis School Board in 1909. The league was formed in 1911 with its aim to secure women's suffrage across the United States. In 1921, it was reconstructed as the Indiana League of Women Voters, a civic organization that continues to this day. Auto tours became a way to spread the word about women's suffrage. In 1912, 5 suffragists, Sarah Lauder, Grace Julian Clark, Mrs. R. Harry Miller, Julia Henderson, and Mrs. W. T. Barnes undertook an auto tour of Hamilton County. It was part of the Women's Franchise League's re-energized campaign to get support for the vote for women. Auto tours were popular because women could stand up in the car and be seen easily by crowds. The contest for the Indiana General Federation of Women's Clubs presidency in 1915 was contentious, as can be seen by this editorial cartoon in the Fort Wayne News, October 30th of that year. Grace Julian Clark supported Lenore Hannah Cox in this election. Cox lost. Clark's family were activists, supporting abolition of slavery and suffrage for women. Her mother, Laura Giddings, organized the Indianapolis Women's Club in 1875. Clark wrote for the Indianapolis Star from 1912 to 1929. Marie Stewart Edwards was the first girl in Lafayette to ride a bicycle. As an adult in Peru, Indiana, she became president of the Women's Franchise League during the years of World War I. She helped found the League of Women Voters and was its first treasurer and later vice president. She was active all her life in civic causes until her death in 1970. The 1917 Mastin-McKinley Partial Suffrage Act gave women the right to vote for presidential electors and certain other elections. It passed in the House 67 to 24. One part of the measure was that women would have to use separate ballot boxes. Thousands of women registered to vote, but on October 26, 1917, the Indiana Supreme Court declared the law unconstitutional. All the work of these women and others led to ratification of the 19th Amendment, granting women the right to vote. Thank you so much for dropping in today. I hope you will continue the struggle to make this land the nation that we all wish it would be, the land of the free, the home of the brave.
I dreamed it was election day in this our Yankee nation, and I, a stranger on these shores, stood by for observation. I saw the voters come and go, the millionaire, the hackman, and beside the man who could not read came the author and the black man. Yes, one and all went to the polls to vote as honest yeomen, but the Indian, the Chinaman, the idiot and the woman. She's in the pulpit, at the bar, she's in the school and college. Her voice and pen incite the world to virtue, truth, and knowledge. She's the dear companion of your home, and you must own, my brother, that which no man will e'er deny. She's every voter's mother. Yes, one and all went to the polls to vote as honest human, but the Indian, the Chinaman, the idiot and the woman. Our country now from thee claim we our liberty in freedom's name, guarding home's altar fires, daughters of patriot sires, their zeal our own inspires justice to claim. Women in every age for this great heritage tribute have paid. Our birthright claim we no longer refuse to bow. On freedom's altar now our hand is laid. Sons, will you longer see mothers on bended knee for justice pray?